What is it about Hope, Arkansas? Is there something in the water?
I think there must be. Maybe in the watermelon, because until Bill Clinton ran for president, the only thing Hope, Arkansas was known for was watermelon. The world's largest watermelon is from Hope, Arkansas. I think the reason that it has produced a lot of people in public service is because it was that kind of community that just bred a sense of community spirit. We believed in God, country, family, very traditional, patriotic, working class. You know, I didn't grow up in a home with privilege. I tell people my father didn't have a seat on the stock exchange. He had a seat on a fire truck. That's how I grew up. You know, not the poorest kid in town, but certainly close enough to understand what it was like. But also grew up believing that hard work, a good education, and honesty would give you the chance to reach the next rung on the ladder.
Huckabee started climbing that ladder by graduating from high school and was the first male in his family to do so. Marriage to Janet, his high school sweetheart, was next, followed by college. He graduated with high honors in only 2.5 years and went on to seminary. He thought he might eventually go into politics and was working in communications for a Christian organization when his career took a sharp detour.
A church invited me to come speak for them, which I did. And they said, well, could you come back and speak for a week in a Bible conference? I said, yeah, I can do that. They were without a pastor. They said, would you be our interim pastor until we can find somebody? And I said, I can do that. And about 4 months later, they said, why don't you just stay? And I did.
12 years later, he was still pastoring, and the thought of a political future was gone forever. But during his tenure as the president of the Arkansas Baptist State Convention at a volatile time, the idea of running for office was resurrected.
People came to me and said, you know, the way that you've helped bring our convention together and give us this leadership, have you ever thought about running for office? Well, little did they know, yeah, I thought about that a long time before I went into the pastorate, thinking that once I went into the pastorate, that would never be an opportunity open to me again.
As it turned out, being a pastor was an ideal training ground for politics.
There's no other profession in this country where a person could put a name and a face on every problem this country faces. Pastors can do that. If you talk about an elderly person who's choosing between medicine and food, pastors know people like that. Talk about a 14-year-old girl who's pregnant and hadn't told her family yet, a pastor can name someone who he's dealt with who's been there. So again, you could name any social pathology that exists. The pastor has dealt with that, could put a name and a face on it. It really shaped my understanding of what the problems and the heart of those problems were.
A pivotal moment in his decision to run for office came when Dr. Joycelyn Elders addressed the Arkansas legislature.
She said that preachers needed to get over their love affair with the fetus. And then she said, and I'll never forget this, she said, and they need to quit moralizing from the pulpit. As if, what's the option? To immoralize from the pulpit? What's the point of a preacher if he can't moralize? If people like that are going to make the policy decisions that will affect the way that our children are being educated in schools and the way that we're going to live in this world, you know what? It may be time that we're going to have to leave the comfort zone. And if we're called to be salt and light, we can't be salt in the shaker and we can't be light in a well-lit room. We're going to have to go where the need is.
Most people, when they decide to run for office, start with city council, maybe stretch for mayor. Not Mike Huckabee. You ran for Senate. Not only did you run for Senate, you ran against a very popular 3-term incumbent, Dale Bumpers.
Yeah.
What was the thinking behind that?
I wish you'd have told me that in 1992. You might have spared me the grief. Yes, it was a fairly bold move to make your first political race, the U.S. Senate, but it also turned out to be a tough year to run as a Republican in the state, even though it's always a tough year to run as a Republican in Arkansas. Bill Clinton was being elected to the presidency, so the turnout was just enormous.
Huckabee lost that election, and because he had resigned from his pastorate to run, he found himself without a job and with a family to support.
But the night of the election, when we had lost, and my wife and I looked at each other and realized we have not a job, but we've got obligations, all these things, we both said, we're not finished. You know, we lost the battle, but not the war. We're not finished. Don't know what the next step is. But both of us were ready the next morning to get up and get back in it. Not even knowing why or how or what, but just knowing that we had been obedient in that pursuit. And it wasn't about the outcome, it was about the commitment.